They threw me a birthday party the week they decided to erase me. It wasn't extravagant, just a chocolate cake from the grocery store. 8 candles poked in unevenly and 2 balloons taped to the kitchen chairs. Mom hummed as she sliced the cake. Dad patted my head and told me to make a wish. He didn't look at me when he said it. I remember that I wished for a dog. Not because I wanted one, I just didn't know what else to ask for. Things had been quiet at home for weeks. Mom stopped picking me up from school, and Dad barely spoke to me unless it was to tell me to clean something. I thought maybe they were just tired, or maybe I had done something wrong without realizing it. 2 days later, I walked into the hallway and saw my duffel bag zipped up and sitting by the front door. My shoes were tucked beside it. I knew then, before they even said a word, that something was ending. Mom called it an opportunity. "You'll be staying with Aunt Geneva for a little while," she said, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. "It's not punishment," Dad added. I didn't ask if I had a choice. I just stood there. I think that made it easier for them. We had dinner like it was a normal Tuesday. Spaghetti with garlic bread. Mom asked if I wanted more Parmesan. I nodded, even though I wasn't hungry. She sprinkled it over my plate like everything was fine. Later that night, I watched her pack a final item into my bag, a pair of old sneakers I had outgrown months ago. She didn't ask what I wanted to bring. She just zipped the bag and set it back by the door. The next morning, we drove to Louisiana to Aunt Geneva's farm. No music in the car. No talking. When we pulled into the driveway, Mom said, "We'll check in soon." Then she hugged me with one arm and got back in the car. They were gone before Geneva opened the front door. I didn't cry. Not then. I just stood on the porch holding the bag that was too heavy for an 8-year-old. I could hear cows in the distance. The air smelled like soil and dust and something unfamiliar. Geneva didn't say much either. She just took my bag and told me where the guest room was. That night, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if the birthday balloon was still floating in the corner of our kitchen back home. If it was, it probably lasted longer than I did. The hallway smelled like lemon polish and something older, old paper, old carpet, old silence. It was cleaner than I remembered. Not better, just cleaner, like someone had gone through it with bleach but couldn't scrub out the history. The picture frames were still up. Same crooked angles, same fingerprints on the glass. Except now, there were 2 girls in the photos. One of them I didn't recognize. The other was me, digitally edited into moments I never lived. There I was, at a beach I never saw, at a school play I never attended. My smile pasted over someone else's weekend. I stood there for a full minute staring at one frame above the heater vent. Christmas, maybe 6 years ago, Tessa, holding a stocking, my father wearing his forced grin. My mother beside them, hand on Tessa's back, and next to them me, a blurry outline, too tall, too still. The photo had been doctored but poorly. They hadn't even tried to match the light. They hadn't erased me. They'd replaced me. I was 8 when my mother got pregnant with Tessa. I didn't understand what it meant. Not at first. She stopped talking about things I liked, stopped asking if I needed help with homework, stopped packing the lunches I liked and started handing me cafeteria money, even though we both knew I never used it. I wasn't trouble, not exactly, but I had a limp from an accident. I couldn't even remember. I walked uneven and she said it made me look like something's wrong. She didn't say it mean. She said it quiet, like a diagnosis. One afternoon, I came home to find my small blue suitcase zipped and upright in the living room. My favorite socks were inside. So were the 2 paperbacks I'd read over and over. There was a note on top, "Be good for Aunt Margot." That night, I sat in the back seat of my father's car as we drove to the next town. He didn't speak the whole ride except once when I asked if I could come home on weekends. "We'll see how it goes," he said. They stayed 5 minutes at Aunt Margot's. She made hot cocoa. My mother declined. My father said, "We'll call you soon." They never did, but every December a card showed up in Margot's mailbox. "To our dearest Eliza," it read, a photo printed on cheap gloss paper. Always the 3 of them smiling and matching sweaters. On the back in my mother's hand, "Still a part of us." I stopped opening them when I turned 13, but Margot kept each one in a shoebox. Just in case you want to remember who they said they were. I walked past the picture wall and opened the linen closet. Inside, on the highest shelf, was a small pair of brown leather shoes, scuffed narrow, slightly uneven at the sole. The ones I wore the day they left me behind. I reached up and took them down, cradling them like something alive. Then I smiled quietly. So they hadn't thrown them out after all, just tucked them away like they did with me. The first few weeks with Aunt Margot were mostly quiet. She didn't ask questions, didn't pry. She just made dinner and made space. She left a lamp on in the hallway outside my room and pretended it was for herself. I didn't speak much that first month. Words had always gotten me in trouble, too loud, too emotional, too needy. So I kept to the rhythms I knew. Wake early, keep out of the way, don't take the last piece of bread. That was a rule in my house growing up. Leave something behind. Don't be the one who finishes things. Margot noticed the way I flinched when the kettle whistled, the way I didn't hang my clothes in the closet, just folded them into the corners of drawers. She never asked why. Instead, she gave me a drawer in the kitchen that was mine. Just mine. She even wrote my name on the inside in pencil, Eliza Spoons. It sounds silly now, but that drawer felt more permanent than any birthday card my parents ever sent. By the time I was 12, I was working weekends at the corner florist. Petals and Ferns sat at the edge of town, run by a woman named Dottie, who wore denim overalls and always smelled like lavender and rainwater. She taught me how to arrange sympathy wreaths, how to talk to grieving husbands, and how to mix bleach into flower buckets to keep bacteria from blooming. "You're quiet," she said. "Once I'm used to it," I answered. She nodded, like that made sense, and she never pushed me to be louder. At 14, I was doing invoices. At 16, I was closing the shop on Sunday nights. I saved every dollar, tucked it into an old metal tin I kept behind my textbooks. The first thing I bought with my own money was a second-hand winter coat, forest green wool with deep pockets. The second thing I bought was a locked fireproof box. I wasn't sure why, I just knew I didn't want certain things lost in a house fire. In it, I placed the old birthday cards from Margot, a photo of me and her on a picnic blanket, and one thing I never touched but never threw away, a tiny gold pin in the shape of a tulip. It had been mine, a gift from my mother on my 5th birthday. She called me her little flower that year. The next year, she forgot my birthday entirely. At school, I did well. Quiet students make easy students. I never skipped class. I never raised my hand unless I was sure Margot would write my name in the corner of grocery lists just to make sure I'd see it. "You exist," those scribbles seemed to say. "Someone remembers you're here." By the time I was 18, I had a full scholarship to state college. I commuted from home, worked weekends at the florist, studied business and accounting. Margot offered to help with rent if I wanted to move out, but I told her I liked hearing the kettle in the morning. I didn't tell her the truth. I still slept with my shoes beside my bed. Toes pointed toward the door, just in case someone said again, "You don't belong here." The house felt louder now. Backyard laughter layered with folding chairs, paper plates, and the soundtrack of a family pretending everything was fine. Tessa's birthday banners fluttered along the back fence. The tables were covered in peach-colored cloths. A photo display leaned against the shed. Baby pictures, dance recitals, first days of school. She looked like the center of a world that revolved around her. I stood just outside the archway of balloons. No one noticed me at first. They were too busy clinking soda cans and talking over each other. The kind of chaos that feels normal when you think the past is buried. Then my mother saw me. She was wearing pale blue linen and holding a tray of deviled eggs. Her hand froze mid-step. Her face tried to decide which emotion to land on. "Eliza!" She said loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. My name rippled outward, heads turned. My father stood under the shade umbrella, squinting like I was a trick of the light. Tessa looked up from a gift bag, confused. "Who's that?" My mother's mouth opened closed, then settled on a brittle smile. "That's your sister." There was no warmth in it, no reunion. Just facts packaged for convenience. Tessa frowned. "I don't have a sister." A pause. I stepped closer, slow and quiet, until I stood on the edge of their perfect tableau. "No," I said. "You have a record of one." My father cleared his throat. "We didn't expect you. So soon, I know." I left a message. I know. There were maybe 40 people present, neighbors, co-workers, extended family. None of them moved, but the silence thickened, the kind where no one wants to be first. I reached into my shoulder bag and pulled out the envelope. It looked so small now, this thing I had folded and refolded for months. worn at the corners but sealed. I held it out toward my mother. She hesitated, then took it like she thought it might burn her. "What is this?" "You asked me to come," I said softly. "To show people you raised a good daughter." She blinked. "Well," I added, "here's what that daughter brought." She didn't open it, just clutched it like a prop. My father was still frozen. Tessa tilted her head, impatient. "Why's she here?" she asked again. "It's my birthday." I turned to her, studied her face. "You're 12 now," I said gently. "That's the same age I was in the photo your mom keeps on the hallway wall. You know, the one where I'm smiling next to her and your dad." She nodded slowly. "I wasn't there," I told her. "They added me in." Gasps weren't audible, but the quiet got louder. A man I didn't recognize leaned toward his wife. Someone else dropped their fork. My mother shifted on her heels. "I didn't come to ruin your party," I said. "I came because I got tired of being edited into a family that never wanted me in the frame." I let the words sit there. Tessa stared, unsure whether to cry or roll her eyes. My mother glanced around nervously, the envelope still clutched in her hand like a mistake she couldn't return. I turned, walked toward the sliding glass doors, and let myself into the house. The smell hit me first. Old carpet citrus cleaner and something like denial. I didn't slam the door, I didn't need to. Everyone heard me leave anyway. The kitchen hadn't changed, same ceramic rooster by the stove, same chipped tile by the sink. Even the smell was the same lemon oil and something just slightly burnt, like scorched toast or old secrets. I set my bag on the counter and opened it slowly, like unwrapping something dangerous. The envelope I handed my mother was only part of what I brought. Inside my bag were printed emails, postmarked cards, a copy of the photo they photoshopped me into, and the school letter that gave them away. That was the moment everything shifted. It came in the mail by accident, addressed to Mrs. Eliza Merrill, congratulating me for academic achievement in business management. My college had sent it to the address on file, my childhood address. Their address. I never told them where I studied. I never told them anything. So when I called the college office, they said, "Oh yes, your mother updated the contact info last year, said it was for our alumni newsletter." She never told me, but she kept the letters, she kept the headlines, she kept the parts of me she could claim in front of strangers. I placed the letter on the counter, face up. Then I laid down a copy of the Christmas card she sent to extended family 2 years ago. Tessa in the snow. Dad on the porch and me again in the corner, the same photo from the hallway, the same fake light on my face. They told people I was busy, that I traveled a lot, that Eliza's off doing amazing things. We're so proud. They never called me, not once. Outside, the party sounds had quieted to murmurs. Someone was standing near the screen door. I could feel it. I turned and opened it. It was Aunt Claire, my mother's older sister. She looked tired but sharp, holding a glass of lemonade and a wrinkled brow. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I thought you were in school abroad. That's what they said." I nodded. I was. "Just not the way they told it." She stepped inside. "Do you want me to stay?" "No," I said gently, "but thank you for asking." I walked back into the living room. It was mostly empty now. A few guests lingered by the hallway, unsure whether they were still supposed to smile or pretend not to hear. My mother stood in the doorway, pale, and pinched the envelope now open in her hands. My father followed behind her slower. He had that look men get when they think they still control the ending, when they think silence will save them. I laid one last page on the coffee table, a transcript from the local church bulletin 5 years ago, where she gave a testimony at a family panel. She said, "Raising girls is hard, but we're lucky we've been through trials, but both our daughters make us proud. Even our eldest Eliza, who lives out of state but never forgets to call." She never gave me that quote. She gave it to the church. Tessa was now at the edge of the room, watching. She looked less angry now, more curious. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. "You lived here." I met her eyes. "I used to," I said. "But they didn't want 2 daughters, just one. They could get right." My mother flinched. "That's not fair." I nodded. I agree. It wasn't. Then I picked up the gold tulip pin, the one I'd worn to kindergarten, the one she gave me when she still braided my hair, and set it beside the papers I brought. "Everything you left behind," I said. "Everything you pretended not to lose. There was no yelling, no dramatic collapse. Just silence, the kind that can't be fixed with cake or balloons. As I turned to leave, my mother reached out, reflex more than intent. "Eliza," she said. I paused. "Don't call me that." "Not today." I walked toward the front door, each step slower than the last, and behind me, for the first time in 12 years, no one told me to stop. The front steps creaked the same way they used to. 3 boards and there was a soft sag under the right foot. I stepped over it without thinking. Muscle memory, even after 12 years I didn't rush. Let them watch. Aunt Margot once told me that the most powerful people in a room are the ones who can leave without explaining themselves. Back then, I thought it was something people said to sound strong. Now I understand it's the only way to survive. People who rewrite you at the bottom of the steps. I paused. The porch railing still had that old ceramic frog I made in 2nd grade, its paint flaking eyes uneven. They'd kept it maybe for decoration, maybe for guilt. I didn't care. I reached into my bag one last time and took out the shoes. Small, worn brown leather with the uneven sole, the pair I wore the day they sent me away. I didn't look around, just bent down and placed them beside the frog side by side, heels touching the wood. Not dramatic, not symbolic, just true. Then I straightened up and walked down the driveway toward the street. A few cars were still parked along the curb. Some guests had already left. Some never knew what happened. Halfway to the end of the block, I heard the door open behind me. "Eliza," my mother's voice. Not shouted, just shaken. I didn't turn, not out of anger, not out of pride, just because I'd already answered everything I came to answer. She called again, softer this time. "Eliza, wait." I slowed, not stopped, just slowed. She needed to say it. I needed not to hear it. In my pocket was the name change form I hadn't filed yet. Not because I doubted it, but because part of me wanted to say goodbye, first to the name, not the people, to the child who waited 12 years for someone to call her home. And now that someone had, not to welcome her, but to display her, to borrow her existence for social credit, I walked until the house disappeared behind hedges and telephone poles, until the smell of party food faded and the sounds were just distant murmurs. Then I turned onto Maple Avenue and kept walking, past the mailbox with our old family name on it, past the park where no one ever took me, past the grocery store where Margot once let me pick any cereal I wanted, and I stood there for 20 minutes because no one had ever asked me that before, and eventually past the line where my history ended and my life began. Back at her house, I brewed tea in the quiet. The old kettle still whistled. The lamp still clicked on by itself at sunset. I sat down, placed the empty envelope on the kitchen table, and wrote one final line on the back. "You didn't lose me, you gave me away. What you lost was the right to say I was ever yours." Then I folded it and slipped it into the fireproof box right beside the tulip pin. I didn't feel triumphant, just still. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.